After picking up the supplements from the clinic, I hurried back to the rental house before nightfall. The key turned in the lock, as usual, twisted twice. The door clicked open with a soft snap. A familiar scent, long absent, flooded my senses. I froze in place, breath caught in my throat. Hearing the sound, the man on the bed looked up from his book. "You're back." My body tensed. I couldn't meet his eyes. Instinctively, I pressed a hand against my stomach beneath the coat. Voice trembling, I stammered, "What are you doing here?" For months, I'd hidden carefully. How did Ethan find me, and how did he end up in my room? These past few months, finding you wasn't easy. Ethan stepped forward slowly, deliberately. I backed away inch by inch until my spine hit the door. One hand lifted to grip my chin, forcing me to look up. "Tell me," he said, voice low, "why did you run?" My face went pale. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. I didn't know what answer he was waiting for. I only knew he was furious. The air around him felt heavy, charged with silence. My whole body ached with unease. I only know that he's angry. His presence carries a heavy stillness, like storm clouds gathering. My body feels tense, unfamiliar with the weight of it all. I've never been exposed to an alpha's pheromones during my pregnancy. The baby shifts inside me, restless beneath my skin. Ethan picks up the file folder from the nightstand. "Is this why you ran?" "I don't need to see it. What's inside is clear. My prenatal records, sealed and waiting." "It's not yours," I say quickly, voice tight with denial. Ethan raises one eyebrow, glances down at the papers in his hand. 20 weeks, just around that time of heat, wasn't it? His hand rests on my lower back, then moves forward slowly. It settles against the curve of my belly. I freeze. My breath catches in my throat. "It really isn't like that." I kept my eyes down, voice trembling. "You saw me take the medicine that day. He was the one who gave it to me." Ethan measures my belly with his palm. Steady, unyielding. "Either way," he says quietly, "you're coming back with me." I've always been alone. As an S-class Omega with a 94% compatibility rate to Ethan, I was taken in by the G family. Two highly compatible S-class alphas and Omegas are likely to produce an S-class alpha offspring. Thus, the G family had long intended for me and Ethan to have a child who would inherit their legacy. However, over the following years, medical evaluations revealed my reproductive system was underdeveloped, making conception extremely difficult. The G family no longer wished to invest time in me and began searching for a new Omega for Ethan. Until a replacement could be found, I remained in the household under awkward circumstances. It wasn't until Ethan's birthday that everything changed. The family publicly announced Ethan's upcoming marriage alliance with the Luo clan. I found it hard to accept, and my emotions slipped out of control. Noticing a bottle of red wine on the kitchen island, I quietly opened it. As I drank, I caught a faint trace of Ethan's alpha scent in the air. In my dreams, I saw him, his eyes dark and still, fixed on me with an intensity that left me unsettled. "Is the wine good?" I nodded slightly, then shook my head. It was Ethan's private collection. Of course it tasted rich, but I knew he'd be upset if he found out. His hand reached toward me. I nodded, then shook my head again. It was Ethan's prized wine. Undoubtedly good, but he'd be upset. His hand reached toward me. I flinched back, fearing a strike. I whispered an explanation. "I accidentally took the wrong bottle." "It's fine," he said softly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Ethan suddenly smiled, gently ruffling my hair. The alcohol began to take effect, dizziness creeping in. I heard his quiet voice through the haze. "Michael, would you mind if I married someone else?" In my dreams, he was always thoughtful, considering how I felt. I choked out a quiet no. "Then who would you prefer, Michael?" I looked down, saying nothing. Driven by the mix of pheromones and alcohol, I summoned the courage to speak. "Everyone says I'm meant for you. Could you accept me?" He did. The arrangement with others was cancelled. Now, I could be with the one I truly cared for. No more tension in front of the G family. The little one has taken root inside me now. I had no power to refuse him, so I went back with Ethan to the G family. As soon as we arrived, he took me straight to the hospital for a full examination. While waiting for results, he had me sign one document after another. The papers clearly stated the deadline for my marriage to Ethan, and that custody of the child would be granted to the G family. I signed without hesitation. There was no other choice left. G family took me in for the sake of that child. I owe them a debt, and I must do something in return. Then Ethan brought me to the civil affairs office to register our marriage. "Why do we still need to get married?" I asked, staring at the document. Our expressions in the photo were stiff. No one would guess we were a couple. After all, G family only wanted me and Ethan to have a child. There was someone else meant for Ethan's marriage. I thought the documents we signed were meant to protect G family's interests. Why did we still need to get married afterward? Ethan looked at the papers without lifting his head and said, "The heir of G family won't be an illegitimate child." I nodded slowly, understanding it now. I didn't speak again. Ethan dropped me off at his apartment and left immediately, as if he'd simply completed a duty. He wouldn't stay even for a moment longer. I wandered through the house and found there was no extra room to sleep in. Eventually, I returned slowly and sat down on the sofa. Later, my awareness began to blur. Someone whispered my name beside me. A warm, soft touch brushed against my face, so hot it jolted me awake. I opened my eyes to meet Ethan's deep gaze. "Why aren't you in bed? There's no room left." Ethan's expression grew colder, his hand resting gently on my pregnant belly. "The child is this far along. Do you still think it's okay to sleep apart?" I froze, then slowly shook my head. It wasn't because I wanted to. It was because I was afraid. Ethan disliked being disturbed, especially by anyone entering his space without permission. Our marriage had been arranged for the child's sake. Just a temporary arrangement to give him legitimacy. How could I ever assume such freedom? He lifted me into his arms and walked swiftly toward the bedroom. "The child must be kept safe. This way, I can look after you more easily." So it was only for the child. I'd almost let myself believe he might have cared a little too. That's why he had pursued me so long and trusted the child without question. All along, it was only about a child, and I happened to carry one of his. I tucked away my quiet disappointment and answered in silence, "I understand." The G family seemed to value the child in my womb more than I had imagined. I had assumed they might doubt the child was Ethan's, but whatever Ethan told them, there was no trace of suspicion. The old house sent me nutrition meals every single day without fail. Even Ethan was instructed to come home at the same time each day to be with me. After our daily check-in, he would hold me close on the bed, staying quiet for a while. "Michael, I'm leaving on a trip tomorrow." Having lived with the G family so long, I had grown used to days without seeing him. Back then, I stayed in the old house while he lived here. I would come over sometimes at Carl's request, trying to build a connection with Ethan. But each time I arrived, Ethan always claimed he had something to attend to. I'd watch his silhouette fade away through the doorway. Once my allotted time passed, I would return to the old house and report back. Now though, Ethan actually told me about his plans without being asked. He frowned at my distracted look, gently pressing the side of my face. I studied his expression, calm but firm, and whispered, "Then today, I'll need a little more care." The first time I'd ever asked for something like that. The first time I asked him for something. I fidgeted with my ear, nerves taut, bracing for a refusal. Silence stretched on without answer. "I'm tired," he said quietly. "I need to sleep." I rubbed my stinging eyes and yawned, masking the tightness in my chest. Ethan brushed his lips against mine. Light, fleeting, caught off guard. I froze, breathless. "We've already done this," he murmured. Why such a reaction? He leaned in again, pressing his mouth to mine with quiet insistence. When it ended, I sank into the warmth of his embrace and fell asleep. The week without Ethan felt longer than any before. Even after years of going days without seeing him, this absence ached. Just a few days, and something inside me felt hollow. The mark on my neck faded, almost invisible now. No matter how much I tried to soothe the unrest within, he remained restless. He truly was a child of the G family. Even before birth, his pull toward Ethan had begun. When servants brought dinner, I couldn't help asking when Ethan would return. They said it would be a few more days. In the end, I clutched one of his shirts and held it close to sleep. Midway through the night, thirst woke me. The moment I stepped out of the room, I heard unusual sounds coming from downstairs. I froze in place, pressing myself against the wall, too afraid to move. Then, a familiar voice broke through the darkness. "Michael, why aren't you asleep?" I let out a quiet breath and turned on the light inside the room. Walking toward him, Ethan studied my face closely. "Emma said you threw up after dinner tonight?" I gave a low, reluctant nod, instinctively moving closer to him, drawn by the scent. His body heat was intense, and his natural presence lingered strongly in the air. Orange, citrusy, and sweet. That sharp, bright scent calmed the rising nausea in my stomach. Ethan reached up and rested his hand against my forehead, his voice rough. "Don't do that." I looked up in confusion, a quiet ache of disappointment forming. Not that our marriage was born from love, but he's the child's father, 7 days away with no word. And now, when he finally returns, he won't let me seek comfort in his presence. I came to my senses and stepped back a few paces, muttering under my breath, "Fine. Then I won't." Back in my room, I saw Ethan going through the medicine cabinet. The sound of a plastic bag tearing echoed sharply in the stillness. Soon, the scent of orange faded significantly. I felt even more hollow. After a long pause, Ethan moved closer. "Are you upset?" I mumbled, voice low and distant. "No, a mere vessel for producing an heir. How could I possibly be angry?" He never shared his emotional state. The burden fell on me alone. It wasn't my responsibility. The next moment, Ethan brushed his thumb gently across my cheek and asked, "Is it because I didn't let you know how I felt? Or something else?" I gently grasped his arm. "Ethan, I'm not angry." Ethan speaks softly near my ear. "I could tell that day you seemed really drawn to it, always staying close by." The presence of the child within me grew more undeniable with each passing moment. At 7 months, a doctor from the G family arrived at our home. He said Carl had sent him to draw blood for testing the baby's gender and signal strength levels. After the needle was removed, a sharp, lingering discomfort remained. I glanced at Ethan, then at the doctor, hesitantly asking, "Did my grandfather mention what would happen if the baby wasn't an S-level alpha?" The doctor exchanged a silent look with Ethan. He stiffened, avoiding my gaze, only telling me to rest soon. I had no choice but to turn to Ethan. Ethan gently touched the top of my head. "No matter the gender, he's still our child. Isn't that right?" His words didn't ease my anxiety. I used to not care about the baby's sex, as long as he was healthy. After the blood draw, I silently prayed he would be an S-level alpha. Otherwise, I feared I wouldn't be strong enough to protect him. Late at night, Ethan returned with the results. My breath caught in my throat, my pulse racing as if it might burst through my chest. I had barely risen when Ethan was already standing before me. "How did it go?" Ethan's gaze lingered for a moment on my swollen abdomen, then shifted to my face as he spoke. "It's an S-class alpha." I exhaled slowly, the weight in my chest finally easing. Thank goodness. The heavens still seemed to be watching over me and our child. Ethan's expression softened, too. His hand briefly brushed my shoulder in quiet reassurance. "You've been strong, Michael. Grandfather said he'd like to meet you. Come by the ancestral estate next week during the gathering. He wants to talk." I barely registered his words, my attention fixed on the document in my hands. Soon enough, it was time to go to the G family's old estate. The elder received me alone. It was Carl who first proposed taking me in. I've always been grateful to him, and deeply afraid, too. He gave me everything I have now, and he could just as easily take it all away. His sharp eyes swept over my swollen belly, then settled on mine. "Michael, how have you been lately?" I stood stiffly, instinctively shielding my stomach. "Everything's fine, grandfather." He asked again, "Is Linchung taking good care of you?" "He's been attentive, always coming back every day." I knew exactly what Ethan's attentiveness meant, though I didn't say it aloud. "Good." Carl sipped his tea slowly, setting the cup down with deliberate calm. "Linchung said this child is a grade S alpha. You know, in time, this child will be the heir. Everything must be handled with care, knowing what to do and what not to do. Keep that in mind. The G family won't let you go unfed, but don't entertain thoughts that don't belong." He lifted his eyelids slightly, glancing at me with a warning still in the air. My fingers turned cold. I pressed them hard into my palms to keep my face steady, whispering back, "I understand, grandfather." Carl closed his eyes again. "Today's Mateo's birthday. Go downstairs and spend some time with him." I felt a sudden relief, almost like fleeing, as I left the stuffy study behind. The ballroom on the first floor shimmered with light, crowded with people in elegant attire, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Ethan had been called away by the elder and wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. I had no interest in joining the festivities. Instead, I slipped into a quiet corner to wait for him. Mateo never liked me since childhood. I avoided him whenever possible, and still he found me. Mateo's voice carried a sharp edge of mockery, laced with disdain. "Well, look who's here, our family's great hero. Big with child and still showing up to my birthday party." How touching. A hush fell over the room as eyes turned toward us, curious and searching. I shifted in my seat, heat rising in my cheeks, desperate to leave. Mateo stepped directly into my path. Why the rush? Michael's here. Let's talk. I clenched my fingers, not wanting to stir trouble. I need to go back. Mateo studied me from head to toe, his gaze as cold and detached as someone assessing a discarded item. Michael, he said, voice low, don't tell me you really believe that carrying my brother's child means you get to stay with him forever? No. Mateo let out a short laugh. Just us here, no one else listening. Tell me the truth. Don't you want to be with my brother? Don't you wish to stay by his side? My breath caught, and I looked away, unable to meet his eyes. It's exactly because I do that I'm carrying this child. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dared use pheromones to gently guide Ethan toward me. The baby stirred inside me, soft and sudden. A quiet reminder of how Ethan has changed lately. How he's been watching over me, making sure I'm steady. Since the first movement, he's made a habit of speaking to the child each night. He reads stories aloud, plays soft music. Small things that fill the silence with care. The doctor said calming signals could significantly ease discomfort during pregnancy. So Ethan would give me a temporary marker every day. After marking, he'd stay with me patiently, rarely leaving my side. What Mateo had said, how could it possibly be true? Ethan wouldn't act like that at all. I met Mateo's calculating gaze. This is between me and Ethan. Your opinion doesn't matter. You really dare to dream so boldly? Mateo's smile held a sharp edge. After all I've done for you, helping deliver an S-class alpha was the least you could do. And it's already generous. Once the child is born, my brother will divorce you. Do you understand? Don't act so surprised. You think I'd tell you this without him knowing? I tried to speak back, but my throat felt tight, no sound came out. Deep down, I've always known. Ethan only married me because of the child. Yet his kindness toward me didn't feel pretend. Michael, are you mute? Mateo stepped closer, irritation flickering as he tugged at my arm. I swayed slightly, losing balance for a moment. Ethan appeared instantly and pulled me into his arms. Warm signals enveloped me. Soothing, steady, familiar. Mateo went pale, his voice tight with urgency as he tried to explain. Brother, I didn't do anything. He just lost his balance on his own. I didn't push him. Ethan's face darkened as he stepped in front of me, shielding me with quiet intensity. Mateo, even play has its limits. Mateo looked down, lips pressed into a thin line, muttering an apology. Ethan lifted me effortlessly into his arms. Michael is your sister-in-law. Treat her with respect. Mateo watched us go, eyes heavy with quiet resentment. The next day, I received an anonymous message, a photo captured in passing. Ethan and Noah stood together selecting rings. Familiar faces, familiar smiles. The date on the image matched exactly with Ethan's business trip. Their expressions were too bright, too easy, the kind that cut deep. Michael, aren't you going to leave? They've already set the wedding date. Just waiting for the announcement. So the G family had never truly let go of their plan. That explained why Carl and Mateo had spoken to me that way. And what about Ethan? His quiet care, the steady messages every day. Gentle, constant, always there. Was it really only to keep me calm until the baby came? For a moment, my breath caught, my throat tightening. Without warning, a sharp pain surged from deep within me. Darkness flickered across my vision, and I slid limply to the floor, in and out of consciousness. Hurried footsteps echoed around me, mixed with servants' gasps. Michael! What's wrong? The words had barely settled when a familiar citrus note flooded in. Overwhelming, charged with urgency and distress. Michael, stay awake. Look at me. Ethan lifted me quickly, carrying me toward the door with determined strides. I whispered weakly, my stomach. It hurt so much. The engine roared as we sped away like an arrow, racing toward the hospital. Throughout the ride, Ethan kept sending calming waves of scent, his eyes wide with worry. I couldn't tell whether he feared for me, or if it was the child within me that had him on edge. When the pain paused just briefly, I seized the moment of clarity and asked, Ethan, after this baby is born, will my debt to the G family be erased? Ethan stiffened slightly. He lowered his head, brushing damp strands from my forehead. I pressed on stubbornly. So we're truly done with the G family? Is that it? At last, he swallowed hard. His voice was low and clear. Yes, after the child is born, you'll be completely free of ties with the G family. The answer came, and the pain surged back. In that moment, I couldn't tell if it was my stomach or my heart hurting more. I let myself slip into darkness. When I came to, the sharp smell of antiseptic filled my nose. The anesthesia hadn't worn off, but the crushing pressure inside me had gone. Ethan entered from outside. Seeing I was awake, he immediately sent a calming signal. Is it still painful? I shook my head slightly, silently calculating how to leave this place. Moments later, Ethan spoke again, his voice noticeably rougher than usual. Michael, he's a boy, and the differentiation prediction is S-tier alpha. But he was born prematurely, and will need to stay in the incubator for now. An S-level alpha, really? Then I truly have no chance of raising my child myself. I blinked slowly, my throat tight with sorrow. Ethan hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Do you want to see him? See the child? Never mind. Since we were leaving anyway, I decided it was better not to see him. I feared that if I saw the child, I'd never be able to let go of him to the G family. I squeezed my eyes shut as hard as I could, as if that would block out everything around me. Under Ethan's quiet hope, I answered with a voice worn thin. No, not now. The figure by the bed seemed to still, his expression careful, guarded. Just take a look, he said gently. You're his Omega father. He's very gentle. He was in the incubator before I brought him to you. Do as you wish. I turned away. Just leave me. I'd like a moment alone. I didn't respond again. The anesthesia faded slowly. Sharp waves of pain crept in one by one. I turned my head and watched Ethan leave the room. I whispered silently, goodbye. As soon as he was gone, Carl's people arrived. Michael, it's time to go. They didn't wait for me to recover from the surgery. They pulled me away without hesitation. 2 years passed in a blink. After leaving the G family, I opened a small guest house in a coastal town. With Ethan's own words, we're even, to carry with me. Now I no longer had to live in fear of being taken back by the G family, hiding every day. I didn't have to feel lost and unsure, as I had when staying with the G family. The quiet certainty of being free felt real, like sunlight after long rain. I turned down the narrow stone path leading to my small guest house. A soft, warm weight suddenly pressed against my thigh. A small voice, clear and trembling with distress, called out, Bobby. My breath caught. Slowly I looked down. A child, perhaps 2 or 3 years old. Round cheeks and wide eyes carried a familiar quietness. Was it him? Couldn't be sure. A sudden regret stirred. Had I missed the chance to see him once, just once? The little one called again. Daddy. This time, the word came out sharp and clear. I knelt slightly and said, Sweetheart, you've made a mistake. No. The child clung tighter. Want Daddy? Hold. Words tumbled out in fragments. He couldn't say his parents' name. I reached into the small backpack on his back, searching for a clue, then gently spoke to ease his fear. An Omega hurried over, breathless and urgent. Austin, what are you doing here? He lifted the small child into his arms with quiet urgency. Dad. The Omega's expression faltered, then broke into a soft laugh. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't hold your hand right. My apologies to you, Austin. Hearing that, I watched silently as the two stood close in quiet reunion. A strange weight settled inside me, unnamed but undeniable. The man rose with the child still in his arms and only then noticed me standing nearby. He offered a gentle smile. Sorry for the trouble, sir. I managed a quiet reply. A child this young should always be watched closely when out. The words had just settled in the air when a familiar low voice came from behind. Noah. Did you find Austin? I didn't need to turn around. I already knew who it was. That unmistakable scent of orange notes. So sharp, so familiar, it stole my breath. Noah carried the child forward. He's found. I couldn't help glancing back. Noah handed the boy to Ethan. Ethan said nothing, no reprimand, no sharp word. Instead, he gently told the child never to wander off again. For a split second, her heart felt gripped by an invisible hand. Stilled, suspended in silence. 2 years had passed, and she finally understood. Mateo's words all those months ago were not empty promises. Ethan had never seen her as anything more than a vessel to bear his heir. The tenderness he showed after bringing her back to the G family had all been an act. The real alliance was with Noah, standing before her now. He even made her call him father when speaking to his son. Ethan stood several paces away. His gaze was heavy, like ink that would never dissolve. locked onto her face. Michael, his voice was rough, edged with hesitation and a tremor. Was it you who found Austin? She didn't reply. Her eyes lingered on the small figure in his arms. Noah, ignored, tried to speak up. Ethan, I was the one who found Austin. His face lit with quiet joy. He just called me Dad a moment ago. Ethan didn't respond. He stood still, holding the child before her. The little one stirred in his arms and reached out toward her with open hands. Dad, he said in a soft, trembling voice. Hold. His name is Sebastian. Austin is his nickname. Michael, do you want to hold him? Ethan shifted slightly toward me. He's a bit heavy though. Meeting the child's wide-eyed look of hope, I almost reached out before I could stop myself. I looked away, clenching my fists to keep control, forcing my voice to stay calm. No, we should probably keep our distance. You said it yourself. Once the child was born, we'd be even. I've held up my end. Please do the same. I turned to look at Sebastian. His lower lip trembled, eyes glistening, clearly hurt by my refusal. Tugged at me, softening the edge of my resolve. I pushed the feeling down and refused to meet his gaze again. Ethan tightened his hold on the boy, face tense with concern. Michael, who said we were even? You still owe me someone. Someone for Austin. You still owe him a father. I froze. The even was Ethan's own promise to me. Now it had become my debt. Noah was standing right behind him. Why come to me? What do they want now? I don't owe them anything anymore. I only blame them. Back then, when I was still pregnant, I cherished this child so deeply. Now he's ended up separated from the adults. If it hadn't been for me finding him, who knows what kind of danger he might have faced otherwise. Ethan, you were the one who promised me. Now what's this act? As I was leaving, I couldn't help but glare at Ethan for a moment, my voice cold. If your family can't even watch over a child properly, you're welcome to return him to me. Back at the guest house, I stared blankly at my coat. It still carried faint traces of Sebastian's scent, like milk, and beneath it, a subtle hint of orange. The familiar smell triggered images in my mind without warning. Ethan looked much thinner than before, his features sharper now. Sebastian, on the other hand, had grown round and soft, undeniably sweet. The curtain at the doorway chimed as a breeze stirred the bell. Someone had arrived. I shook my head, pushing Ethan's face from my thoughts. Adjusting my expression, I forced a smile, but I froze when I saw who it was. It was G. Lynching. He held the child with one hand and pulled the suitcase with the other. The child seemed to have just been crying, eyelashes damp, looking worn out and quiet. His eyes brightened when he saw me, but he didn't speak, only looked at me with a hesitant expression. I instinctively glanced behind Ethan. Besides him and the child, no one else was there. You? I watched him warily. Ethan, what brings you here? Ethan pulled out his ID. Check-in. I smiled faintly. Sorry, we're fully booked. I made a reservation in advance. I checked the system. There was indeed a booking. As someone running a business, I couldn't turn away a paying guest. Ethan handed over his ID. His fingertips brushed lightly against the back of my hand. I pulled my hand back as if burned, reluctantly completing the check-in. Taking the room key, Ethan remained standing still. He said abruptly, Noah's gone now. I paused mid-motion, fingers tightening unconsciously. I didn't speak, didn't look at him. He seemed not to need a reply, continuing on as if to himself. Austin was raised by me alone. No one else involved, certainly not Noah. Today was unexpected. Austin was asleep, and he took the chance when I was in a video call. These past 2 years, they've kept pushing me to spend time with him. I refused, so he tried to reach out through Austin. Today's incident gives me a clean excuse to finally be done with him. He paused, placing Sebastian gently on the front desk, and said, Michael, when Austin called out Dad, he was calling for you. Not anyone else. Sebastian smiled warmly at me and said softly, Dad. My heartbeat faltered in that moment. Didn't the G family insist I keep distance from the child? Why did Ethan teach him to call me Dad? And why bring him here in the first place? I couldn't make sense of it, so I forced a neutral expression. My voice flat, Ethan, take the boy back to the room. Don't interrupt my work. It was off-season, and the guest house had few visitors. With a junior staff member on shift, I wandered aimlessly, trying to clear my thoughts. But no matter where I went, I kept running into someone who unsettled me. Ethan chuckled lightly. Funny how that works. I narrowed my eyes at him. After a few times, I started wondering if he'd secretly placed a tracker on me. Ethan, is following me really worth it? Ethan shrugged. I'm here to travel. Is it strange that Austin and I appear where you are? Not strange. But every time I'm somewhere, he shows up with Sebastian. That's the part that feels off. Sebastian held out a small ball and said, Dad? Play? I couldn't bring myself to say no, so I stayed and played with him for a while. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the clouds gold. Sebastian's energy faded. He curled into me and fell asleep, watching his quiet face. I felt something inside me soften completely. I should have gone through with the second plan to take him away long ago. Back at the guest house, I gently placed him in bed. I stayed crouched by his side, reluctant to leave. I was thinking how to get Ethan to let me see the boy more often. A shadow fell over me from behind. Sudden and complete. Before I could react, I was pulled into a warm, steady embrace. It had been too long since I'd been this close to someone like him. For a moment, I froze, then scrambled to pull away. Ethan, what are you doing? Stay still. Ethan tightened his hold slightly. Michael, can I just hold you for a second? He'd already taken me into the embrace before asking. Now he's even bothering to ask permission. I couldn't break free, so I gave him a sharp kick in response. Ethan let out a quiet groan, pressing his face against my shoulder. I said coldly, Ethan, don't forget we've already broken up. What is this supposed to be? Perhaps the words had their effect. Ethan, don't forget we've already ended things. What's this now? Perhaps the reminder took hold. Ethan slowly released me and guided me to sit beside him on the edge of the bed. I stared at Sebastian's rising and falling chest, lost in thought. Ethan spoke hesitantly. I'll show you some old photos of Austin. Michael, in return, can I just hold you for a moment? I admitted it. The offer stirred something deep inside me. These past 2 years, the G family have kept Sebastian shielded closely. I've had no word on him at all. After a long pause, I gave in with reluctance. All right. Ethan opened an album labeled Sebastian. While I was absorbed in the photos, he quietly pulled me into his arms. The baby version of Sebastian looked so small, almost fragile. In Ethan's hands, he seemed like a delicate thing barely held together. Compared to the present day, plump and round, like a soft little cloud of innocence, Sebastian now seems almost unrecognizable. Ethan gently wiped the tear from my eye and leaned in to touch his forehead to mine. It's all behind us, Austin. He's grown so much. Just holding him for long enough makes even an alpha like me feel overwhelmed. Why did he get the nickname Austin? Because over these past 2 years, both of us have missed you so deeply. Ethan suddenly leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. I turned my face away quickly. He barely grazed the corner of my mouth. Ethan looked at me with quiet sadness, whispering low, Michael, I've missed you so much. Please don't ask me to leave. After that day, Ethan no longer felt like just a visitor here. He began to truly settle into the rhythm of the guest house's daily life. It's a small operation, only a few people on staff. When guests checked out, I was responsible for cleaning up. Ethan always offered to help without being asked. He worked clumsily but earnestly, changing linens, sweeping floors. In the garden, where wildflowers were overtaking everything, he patiently learned how to trim them. He nearly ruined one of my favorite plants by accident. Every day, he'd show me photos and videos of Sebastian, quietly, as if trying to reach through time. All I wanted was a single embrace. Sometimes he pushed further, asking for a kiss. I agreed reluctantly, but nothing beyond that would be allowed. And little Sebastian followed me like a quiet shadow, never letting go, moving with me through every step. As soon as I had free time, he'd appear beside me, eager to play with toys or read picture books. Occasionally, he helped water the small plants by the front desk. Things once only dreamed of, the image of a family of 3, began to take shape before my eyes, becoming real, so much warmer than I had imagined. Ethan vanished into the city with Sebastian, quietly and without warning. When Carl found out, he sent several people to search the guest house. He even applied pressure, making threats. Facing Carl, I had no real choice, especially now that Ethan was also asking me to stay with Sebastian in his room at night. When I refused, he stood outside my door holding Sebastian, wearing an expression expression of quiet pleading. The way he leaned on my hesitation made it hard to say no. Ironically, Carl's pressure brought me relief. I decided to talk with Ethan about it. Let them go back quickly, and it'll be enough if I get more chances to see Sebastian later. But Ethan disagrees. Michael, can we promise not to separate again? I stared at the shut guesthouse door without answering. Ethan brushed his lips with his tongue, studying my expression, then whispered, "Actually, I wasn't in that phase on your birthday." I stared at him, stunned and bewildered. He wasn't in a vulnerable phase. Then why did it happen between us? Ethan seemed to gather his thoughts, speaking slowly and carefully. "I'm sorry I waited until now to tell you this. Michael, I've cared for you for a long time, but I never knew how you felt. Grandfather wanted me to marry Noah. I didn't want that. When I realized you didn't either, I let things appear as if you'd influenced me. The medicine I gave you that day wasn't contraception. It was just a daily vitamin. Afterward, I had already planned to ask for your hand in marriage, but then you left. Later, when you gave birth, I didn't know I'd been taken by grandfather's people right after we parted. If I had known, I would never have stayed away from you for even a moment." He had never shared these thoughts with me before, not even after we were separated, me and my child, from the G family because of him. Ethan told me he had already liked me for a long time. What good does it do now? After a pause, I suppressed the bitterness rising in my throat and said quietly, "It's too late, Ethan. Not too late. As long as you give me a chance, it's never too late." Ethan held my hand tightly, as if afraid I might vanish in the next moment. "Michael is already under my control. The matter with grandfather, I'll handle it myself. I just need your agreement. You don't have to worry about anything else." I hesitated, looking at him. I didn't nod, and I said nothing. In front of me, Ethan dialed Carl's video call. Carl's face appeared on screen, dark and tense. I instinctively tensed up, remembering the moment in the study. Ethan gently squeezed my shoulder to calm me. He turned the camera toward me and Sebastian in my arms. Sebastian sat on my lap, laughing softly as he played with his toy. "Grandfather, I already told you before bringing Austin. My partner and Austin's Omega father will always be Michael. The person you brought into my life when I was just a child. You accept it, we'll take Austin back with us. You don't?" He paused, his voice firm and resolute. "Then my life here will be our new beginning." Without waiting for Carl's response, he ended the call decisively. After that day, the G family did not send anyone to disturb their quiet again. Late afternoon, Ethan placed Sebastian gently into my arms. "Michael, I have something I need to handle. Could you keep an eye on Austin for me?" I was relieved to see him go, pressing kisses to Sebastian's head again and again. Nightfall crept in slowly. Ethan returned after a long day. He wore a suit, something rare, his figure upright and steady, drawing attention without effort. After hours apart, Sebastian grew restless, calling out from across the distance, "Dada, hug Austin." Ethan lifted him with one hand and reached for my palm. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's take Austin to walk by the sea." Under a sky thick with stars, waves rolled gently against the shore, their hush like quiet breath. Sebastian wandered barefoot through the sand. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face me. Soft moonlight spilled across his features, tracing the sharp lines of his profile. Then he dropped to one knee. He suddenly knelt on one knee. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I froze, startled. "Michael." Ethan looked up at me, holding a velvet box. "The person I've always loved has been you. No one else. I was wrong before. I thought a marriage certificate and a contract could prove everything, but I forgot the most important part. Saying it out loud. From now on, I won't keep anything inside. I'll tell you everything I feel, everything I want to do." He seemed tense, taking a slow breath. "Michael, can I have another chance?" Sebastian had quietly stopped playing with the sand and now stood beside us. He clapped his hands excitedly. "Daddy gets a chance." The sea breeze brushed my face, carrying Ethan's faint scent of oranges. I stared at him, wordless. Ethan didn't rush, simply holding the ring steady as he waited for my reply. I looked at the two faces, so alike yet so different, and slowly reached out my hand. "Ethan, I'll give you one more chance." I hoped he'd finally mean it this time. This time, I wouldn't be disappointed. Ethan's fingers trembled as he slipped the ring onto my finger, his eyes lighting up with quiet joy as he pulled me into a tight embrace. The grip was fierce, almost like he wanted to merge us completely. A week later, the guest house hung a sign saying, temporarily closed. A car from the G family waited at the end of the alley. Sebastian stirred in my arms, drowsy and bleary-eyed, rubbing his eyes. Ethan set down the luggage and turned to us, his expression gentle. Michael, Austin, we're going home. Sebastian waved his small hands, repeating in a soft voice, home. Then both father and son turned to look at me. I lifted the corner of my mouth and nodded. Yeah, we're going home.